It's just the circumstances, and we rise above the circumstances. Like, it is what it is. Everybody has hardship, everybody has struggles, and here's ours, at least part of ours, and here's how we deal with it. You know what I get frustrated with is when I see people walking around with all their mental and physical ailments, and they wear it like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I have ADHD, and I have this, and bipolar disorder, and this. It's like, are you excited about, like, you seem excited about that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but your identity should be, I'm doing this in spite of, not I'm this way so I can't. Kipp, what's up, man? Great to see you on this fine Monday morning. I'm a little under the weather, but here we are doing our thing on Martin Luther King Day today, I was told. I have a hard time with some of these holidays. I mean, I don't have anything wrong with Martin Luther King Day, but I don't know. So many people are like, oh, it's the day off. And I'm like, it's just another day to me, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I'm
laughing.
Labor Day's
Go ahead. Well, I'm just laughing.
Say, Labor Day's the interesting one to me. I'll go. Labor Day is the interesting one to me because you're celebrating our ability and right to work and all the work that's been created, and you celebrate it by doing the opposite of labor. I've never understood that one, but so be it. If it's an excuse to party or celebrate, then I guess by all means, but I go to work usually.
Yeah, same. I'm just laughing because I know you have an unhealthy relationship with too many holidays. So
fake holidays, as I call them. We can honor and celebrate people, but they're fake holidays. They're not real holidays. Yeah. So it's funny. I was talking with somebody. I was getting my hair cut the other day, and the woman was, I don't know, she was asking, it was like maybe a Friday or something, and she was asking me what I do for work. And I said, oh, I work at home. I work for myself, and I have this, men's leadership company. And she's like, oh, that's cool. She's like, it must be nice. Like you're all done for the day. You can just take the day off. I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, I'm stuck here working. And I'm like, well, I'm going right back to work. She's like, I thought you said you worked at your house. I'm like, yeah, I work at my house. That's where my office is. Yeah. But I think people have a real misunderstanding of what it means to work for yourself and be an entrepreneur. They think, oh, you have so much freedom and flexibility. And you do, of course. But you still have to make smart decisions in order to run the business effectively.
Yeah, and it comes at a price. That's where I get a little sideways with so many social media influencers constantly suggesting that we should all be entrepreneurs. And I'm like, I actually don't know if I agree with that. I don't think most people want to when it comes down to it. It's just they have this false understanding of what it entails. And they think like that lady does, is like, oh, you must not work as much as the rest of us. And it's like, well, or I just never stop working and my mind's constantly working anyway, so it's funny how that is.
I agree that not everybody should be or even wants to be an entrepreneur, but I think those people who aren't ought to have a real awareness of the threats that exist. I think as an entrepreneur, you're a little bit more intimately familiar with the threat of not having work, or the threat of being injured, or the threat of not having a steady paycheck, or the threat of not having benefits like health insurance coverage. Like all of those things are part of what it means to be an entrepreneur. But I think you're a little bit shielded as an employee of an organization. You're actually exposed to the very same risk, but you just don't see it on a daily basis like somebody who's an entrepreneur might. So your ability to lose your job could come today based on factors that are your fault and based on things that are completely outside of your control. I mean, think about at a mass scale what happened in 2019 and 2020 with our response and reaction to COVID. Yeah. How many people lost jobs, lost businesses that have never recovered? So even as an employee, there's two things I would say. Number one, be aware of the threats that exist and make sure your financial house is in order. And number two is you still are your own boss.
Yeah.
And if more employees took that to heart and realized that they have clients too, it's just that their client is the business that's hired them as an employee of that company, but your client is the business. Yeah. And in the meantime, you're working with their clients. And typically those clients are their clients. They're not yours. Your client is the business. So be very aware of that.
Yeah. And what a great mindset to have, right? Those kind of employees that have that mindset around their employment, that see that it's almost like a contract. You start not being passive with your employment with your company that you happen to work for. You start saying, okay, well, how do I know I'm successful? How do I ensure success? Let me get feedback from you to make sure that I'd be successful, just like if you were a client. Everyone should have that entrepreneurial mindset, whether you're being a W-2, 1099, or contract services, regardless.
Right. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Interesting stuff. We're all self-employed in a way. You just got to act like that, I think, based on who your client and your employer is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another event's happening today as well, the inauguration.
Yeah, I think it actually already happened. I think I just got a text or notification or a news alert or something that he's been sworn in. Trump has been sworn in as the 47th president. Just on a anecdotal level, there is so much optimism I have seen over the past 4 to 6 weeks in life in general, not just me personally, but in culture, in business, in the markets, in international and foreign affairs. Do you agree with that, or am I just in my own little bubble and it's a bit of confirmation bias on my part?
I don't know. I mean, my bubble is probably very similar to yours. So, but yeah, I feel it as well. I feel it as well. I think there's a lot of optimism about the market, about businesses in general. I don't know. I feel it, but it might be my circles as well.
Yeah. I like what Ben Shapiro says. I mean, there's a lot that I like what that Ben Shapiro says. And one thing in particular is how he analyzes Trump's domestic and international foreign policy. And he basically says that Trump is a realist and he's pragmatic. All he cares about is stacking up wins. He wants to win. He wants the victories, and it makes him pragmatic. So his principle is around what is best for this country in order to produce big wins for the country. So we can debate and argue Trump's morals, and I think I would agree, like most people, that he's not near the top of the list of morality, for sure. Yeah. But he is also a very pragmatic person who wants to stack wins in America's favor and best interest. And it might be for his own personal glorification. And in this case, fine with me. If that's the case, even, I actually believe he loves America and he loves Americans. But if you don't think that, at least we can acknowledge that his desire for a legacy, let's say, happens to align with American values of exceptionalism and prosperity and freedom and religion and all the other things that this country were founded on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we hit record, we're talking about executive orders. How are you feeling? Yeah. I've heard that there's a massive list that he plans to execute like literally day one. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know how many executive orders he's planning on signing today. I pulled up a list of a few, and I don't quite frankly know how many executive orders other presidents have signed. I do know that historically it continues to increase and increase and increase. And I'm not enough of a United States government type scholar that I know the intricacies of what is allowable for an executive order and what isn't. And I should research and study up on it more. If I'm going to have an opinion about it, that probably would be a good thing.
Yeah.
But I'm not a huge fan of executive orders on either side of the table, because it seems to me, with the limited information that I have, that it usurps our representation as citizens. We elected President Trump collectively, so you could make that argument. But I think more than that is we send our congressmen, our senators, our representatives to the government to represent our self-interests. And it seems to me that executive orders usurp a lot of that, even though I can go through this list and think these are all pretty good things to me. But it's a precedent that allows both sides of the table to just go ahead and sign executive orders willy-nilly whenever they feel like they want to change, instead of going through the halls of Congress, which seems to me was the purpose of the executive branch. Executives carries out, executes the orders and the laws that Congress come up with. So
yeah, got it.
Yeah, as far as some of the go ahead.
No. I was just. Today. I know. No, I was just going to say something that and I know it's not the same exact correlation, but I love this analogy that be doing it. And I know that's a little bit different from a governmental perspective, but I have a tendency to always look at everything from a perspective of leadership. And there's we got to be careful when we default to authority to get things done. And that should always just be okay, well, hold on. Is this getting done strictly just because of command and control and authority? And if so, why? Why does it require the authority to execute? Why can't I convince and or get other people involved through my influence? And I know that's a little bit more complex once you talk about two-party systems and everything else, but I think it's just a good thing for us to always consider, especially even with our kids, right?
I don't entirely agree with that. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with the premise that we should always look for buy-in from the people that we're leading, and we should ask ourselves, why do we need to exert it in this way instead of having that buy-in? But there are things as a government official, and there are things as even a father where, no, this is the order. And so the two qualifiers you gave, I don't necessarily always agree with that. Why aren't people bought in? Well, my kids aren't bought into going to bed on time.
Yeah.
Or aren't bought into doing the dishes. And then I shouldn't be doing it. Shouldn't be doing what? Putting the kids to bed on time or having them clean the house. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think what you're suggesting, and I agree with this, is that we ought to be aware of, if we're having it to do it this way, what other factors can we change in the way that we approach these things that need to get done in order to get buy-in, so that it doesn't have to be this knock-down, drag-out fight every time you want the kids to go to bed, for example.
Yeah, and authority will only last you so long, right? That will work when your kids are little. Once they start becoming teenagers and other things, it's like, oh, shit, well, I guess I actually have to communicate more effectively to get them to do something that I would like them to do. And now we start talking about the importance of being in a position of influence and not just ruling through authority. And often in this context, it's really about, is it about the thing getting done, or is this really about teaching our children to want to do something that is difficult to do? And
yeah, it's fair.
If we default to authority, then it will get done, but we lost sight of the entire purpose.
Yeah, it's that commitment versus what's the other one? Commitment versus compliance.
Yeah.
I remember when I must have been, 16, 17 years old. And my mom, and I'd always been a pretty good kid, good grades,
Sure.
very active. And truly, I'm actually being honest about that.
Oh, okay.
I was always pretty good. Not really much trouble at all. But yeah, good grades. I was on sports teams, like keeping up with my homework. Like, it was fine. Everything was good. And I remember one day my mom was like, hey, you need to be home by this time or whatever. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, what? And I said, no, I'm not going to be home at that time. And she's like, why? What are you talking about? And I said, my grades are like 3.8, 3.9. I'm active in sports. I don't get into trouble. Like, I've got good friends. You know all of them. I'm not coming home at that time. I said, but if my grades slip or I mess up in football or sports or whatever it might be, then we can have that discussion. But no, I'm not going to. And she's like, oh, okay. And then from that point forward, but again, I think that had a little bit to do with my personality and the fact that I was doing well enough over here that wasn't an issue, And so, but I've always been a little independent. But it is funny when you start to see that your kids gain some of this independence. You're like, excuse me? What did you just say?
Yeah, totally.
All right, man. Well, I was going to actually mention some of these executive orders. We don't really know how many are going to be signed today, but there are 10 that are interesting to me as far as it goes with immigration, also defining sex and ending DEI programs, national emergency and electric vehicle mandates. I'm not going to go through all of these, but a couple that stood out to me are, number one, declaring a national emergency at the border. I think that's a wise move. That will allow, it says here, and this is in NPR, the armed forces to finish the border wall and security fence to deploy members of the armed forces and National Guard to the border, which I think is warranted. End catch and release is a big one, because we're not just going to release people. They never go back to their court. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Designate criminal cartels as terrorists. There's a lot in here. I'm not going through all of it. This one's interesting to me. This is going to be a struggle, I think, right here. says end birthright citizenship. I can't see him doing this through executive order, but it says here the official said the White House plans to end birthright and citizenship, which is enshrined in the 14th Amendment. They argued the amendment does not recognize automatic birthright citizenship for the citizens born in the U.S. to parents without legal status. So there's going to be a lot of legal challenges on that one, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm not horribly opposed to that. I just don't know how you enact that when you have kids here who are born in the U.S. who we're now debating and arguing whether or not they're citizens. That's an interesting one. And then this one was big to me on a different subject, defining sex and ending DEI programs. A lot of these DEI programs will be ended within the federal bureaus and organizations,
government agencies,
and then also the government says that the policy of the United States to recognize two biologically distinct sexes, male and female. So I think that is actually a very, very good thing, because that's the reality. Now, you can call yourself a woman if you're a man, and you can call yourself a man if you're a woman. You can obviously still do that, but you're not a different sex. We're defining it as two sexes, and I think that brings a lot of truth back to the cultural conversation, because obviously politics has tremendous influence on culture. So, like I said, other ones, national energy emergency, so that way we can drill again and open up American energy, which I think, obviously, why would we want to buy energy from other countries that don't believe in our way of life? That seems ridiculous to me. So stuff like that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting.
It's going to be interesting. Like I said, all of these, I have some questions about some, but for the most part, as I go through this list, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we saw Fauci, Mark Milley, all of the J6 committee, all pardoned at midnight last night. That is, again, more precedent for other. Yeah. Of course it is. And it's just more precedent for other presidents, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, to continue to do this down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, it really sets the wrong tone. So let's jump into questions. We got some from the Iron Council, as well as the Instagram.
The Gram. Okay.
Marc-Andre Haché.
I did way better with names than you did last week.
I'm sure you did. Although this is a hard name.
I think I had pretty easy names, so I think maybe I did botch a lot of them. I don't know. I'm like,
well, the reality of it is it's all about how you deliver and with confidence, because who knows if you pronounce it wrong? That one person. But if
anybody else named that way.
Yeah, if you hesitate without confidence, everyone's like, yeah, he slaughtered it. So whatever.
Yep.
I pronounced it right. All right. So with Valentine's Day around the corner, what are non-commercialized gifts or special things that you've done for your wife? What has worked well or been appreciated?
Non-commercialized, I'm assuming that's just experience.
Flowers.
That's really all it can be. Even that is commercialized, right? Where do you go to get flowers? You buy them at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So I can't help but think, what are you asking outside of presents?
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
I think so too.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. You know, maybe there's a little staycation. I know that has some commercialized aspect because you're having to buy a hotel room or an Airbnb or whatever. But, you know, it's hard when you're married or you have children to be able to get away for any amount of time. But if you can do a night or two getaway to somewhere special, somewhere meaningful for you. You know, we're at the base of the national park. I'm about 25, 30 minutes from the entrance of Zion National Park. And for me and my girlfriend to be able to just like go hike and go explore, that works out pretty well for us. You've probably got something like that you have in your area. Also, there's things that you can do, like leaving notes, you know, show signs of appreciation that you care about her. Clever gifts, maybe things that you can do together, even if they are commercialized. So maybe that's going to get, I don't know, massage together or going shooting. One thing my girlfriend and I like to do is we go shooting. So we go out. We have a pistol course coming up this weekend that we'll be engaged in with M42 Adventures. If you go to m42adventures.com/pistol, by the way, we still have a couple of spots on that. That's this weekend in southern Utah. Or we'll go out, you know, south of town and go shooting out there. Just things together, I would think, are like non-commercialized items, but they go a long way in telling people that you love them and appreciate them.
Yeah. There's nothing I'd add. Like when I think about Asia, I think all the things would be handwritten notes, time together, staycation, getting away, those kind of things. So now if I don't do them, I know better. And it's documented.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You want me to delete that, Kipp? So that's not
absolutely.
on record. I think another thing you can do, these are things you kind of should be doing in my mind anyways. I don't really see, again, fake holiday. Valentine's Day is a fake holiday. I guess they're all a fake holiday, kind of in a way, but whether or not I acknowledge it's fake or not is what determines whether or not it's fake. But you should be doing these things anyways, so it might not be out of the realm of, ordinary for you, which actually I think would be a pretty good thing, So, yeah, that's what I've got.
All right, Jeremy Coffey, what's your go-to song when you need to get fired up?
Oh,
you don't listen to music when you go to the gym.
I don't listen to a lot of music. I don't. I used to listen to podcasts when I work out. Yeah. And now I actually don't listen to anything, whatever they have playing on the radio at the gym. I like it better. I know some guys want to go to the gym and zone out and listen to pump up music, and that's cool. No, I have no problem with that. But for me, I actually like to engage with the environment. That means I like to, smile and nod or talk to somebody. There was a guy next to me, and I'd seen him going to the gym for a while. And by the way, the things that I advocate, guys, for you to do, I'm doing myself. So a lot of you guys are wondering, how do you make friends? And I said, go to the gym and make friends at the gym. They're like, how do you do that? So yesterday, or I think it was last week, I was working squats. I was doing back squats. And I looked over, and I can't get really good depth. I would need to work on my hip mobility. And I looked over, and this guy is squatting. He's a big guy. He's probably 6'3", 6'4", maybe weighs, 230 if I had to guess. He's a big guy. And big guys aren't notorious for hip mobility and the ability to stretch and bend and contort themselves. They can, but they're not notorious for it. And this guy was like, his butt would hit his ankles when he would squat, like super low.
Awesome.
I'm not even sure you need to do that, but he was going that low. And so I'm like, dude, and he took his earbuds out. I'm like, I was just watching you like do your squats. You go so low. I struggle like getting any depth. I can almost like not barely even get to parallel. And he's like, oh, can I show you a couple things? And he showed me a few pointers and tips. It was awesome.
Awesome. So
I like not having stuff in my ears because then I can actually engage with the people around me. So I don't need to be pumped up either. I'm at the gym. Like I'm going there to work out. I don't need something to like push me harder. That's why I'm there. I'm literally there to push as hard as I can. That seems like enough to me, for me, not for you.
Yeah.
That's a really boring answer to your question. But obviously, you can go back to like Thunderstruck is probably the greatest pump up song of all time. Metallica is great for that. Some Guns N' Roses is good for that. So I go back to the hair bands and, the early days. And that's what I would go to if I needed something to pump me up.
Some Offspring, maybe. I like some 90s hip hop. I don't know. It really depends. I'm not like I need to get a pump up song, but sometimes when I'm running, I'll listen to like EDM like beats.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, for whatever reason I kind of zone out and it kind of gets a rhythm going.
There is something about the beat of certain music like that, but other music that has a cadence and a rhythm to it that you can almost sync your running or your activity to. And I think there's value in that. I could definitely see that.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeremy. We're kind of boring there.
We're boring.
Yeah. Mostly Ryan.
Maybe we're not boring because we don't need to be pumped up. Maybe Jeremy's boring because he needs to be pumped up.
Yeah. Get some discipline.
Mostly me. Is that what you said?
You don't need music. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's actually probably true. You can get some Jocko pre-workout and you won't have any problem being fired up at the gym or wherever you need to get a pump.
Jeremy, I got you a solid. I got you a solid. Who is the artist? Oh man, I should have thought about this so I'm not like scrolling. Who's the artist that does remix songs of like Goggins, Jocko, Rogan?
Oh, I don't know.
Akira the Don. There you go, Jeremy. So look up Akira the Don. This guy takes like podcast sound bites from like Jocko's Good and Goggins talking shit, and he adds like a beat to it.
Oh, really?
And so
That's
it's like
funny.
inspirational / music to work out to. So there you go. Akira the Don.
There, that's awesome. I'll have to check that out too.
I knew I had something for you. All right, Zach Allen. I was wondering what language you would use to explain to your young preteen boys, 10 and 12, the importance of love. I've tried to explain to my nephew that material things do not satisfy the soul for long. What matters is the love and appreciation you feel for God, and in turn, he feels for you. And also that love for his brothers and sisters and mom and stepdad. I don't think he really understood. Maybe he couldn't actually feel how I loved because he said those are just words. Being lovable and showing love to others are not just words. They are the most important things someone can learn.
Well, when you first asked that question, or you read that question, I was going to say Spanish, because I understand Spanish about as well as I understand the language of love. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Here's how I look at love. And I think you kind of alluded to this in the end of your question there. Love, it can express a feeling. And these are all just words. Words are interesting to me because they're just noises that our bodies make. That's really all they are. And we collectively have said that noise that you're making right now means this thing.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's really fascinating to me for some reason.
It is.
So love is just an expression of the way you feel. That's one way we use to define that word. I think it's fine. I love my girlfriend. I love my kids. They're important to me. I value them. All of those things are elements of love. I think a more appropriate definition or framing of love is that love is a verb. It's an action word.
It's what we do.
And so we do things, and we also don't do things out of love. So we don't cheat on our partners because we love them. You might have that opportunity, but you don't, because you love that person. And you're expressing your love through the action of not doing something. Or to the point earlier about gifts, you might get somebody a gift because you love them and you want to show the appreciation and show the outward expression of the way that you feel about that individual. Or here's a one that a lot of guys run into, every man on the planet. You and your wife get into a fight and you choose not to blow up or not to hit her or not to blow up the marriage or not to run away. You choose instead to be forgiving and to try to be patient and kind and tolerant and respectful back to her because you love her. And so you make those concessions and you change the way you might otherwise respond to somebody yelling at you. You know, some random stranger yelled at you the way your wife might yell at you on the street, you'd probably punch him in the face. But you don't do that to your wife because you love her. So for me, love is all about what we do and what we don't do. And if you do certain things, then that means you are not loving that person as much as you could if you do the right things or avoid the wrong things.
Yeah. Well, and Zach, one thought that I would have if I were having a conversation with the 10 and 12-year-old is I would ask them what they think love is.
That's a good, great point.
And let them have the context of relatability to how they see the world, and then you add on to it, right? Because I think most of us know, or at least can explain what it feels like for them, and it might be different than your definition. Right, just like we know that there's love languages, and we see certain actions as more beneficial than others, or more in line with the expression of love. And so it might be a great opportunity to ask them, what is love to you? And what do you think it might be for your mom and for your sister? And how is that different? And how do we interpret things differently? And it's not wrong or right, it's just different, that we might see different actions as the expression of love as well.
Yeah, that is a good point. When you're talking with someone young who maybe doesn't quite fully understand the concept, is figure out where they're coming from. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I wrote one more thing down here, Kipp, is love is also the way that we treat people and things too. So you can love things. You know, for example, my son, he's got his, I can't remember what year it is. I think it's 2002 or 2003 Ford Ranger. He loves it. And so he takes care of it. He washes it out, he cleans it out, he keeps it nice and tidy. And when it's dirty, he cleans it up. He doesn't let it get dirty. And I would argue that somebody who doesn't treat their things right doesn't love them as much. You know, my youngest son, he's 8 years old. He's into Lego. And the other day he was talking to me about his cousin, how mad he is at his cousin, who's probably 9 or 10, or maybe actually younger. I think maybe 6 or 7. And I'm like, why are you mad at her? And he's like, she went in my room and broke my Legos that I made. Yeah, well, he loves his Legos. Yeah. So he's protective of them. He doesn't like people messing with his shit because he loves it. Like, I can appreciate that. You know what I mean? And we think it's silly because it's Lego, but it's not silly. It's what it is. It's important, and he loves it. So it's the way that we treat things. And I think for a 10 and 12-year-old, you know, it might explain that, especially when it comes to chores. I remember when I was in high school, I would have been a freshman, sophomore, around that time. I remember before baseball season, we would always go out because we got snow where I lived in southern Utah, but we'd always go out before first practices, several weeks leading up to it, and we would groom the field. We would as a team, we would pull weeds, we would mow, we would paint, we would bring sand in where it needed to. Coach would get sand in his truck, we'd drive it out and pour sand and level it out, clean the bases up. And we just made it look as pristine as possible. Fences need to be fixed, all that kind of stuff. And nobody ever had a problem with it. You know, in the minute, we might have been like, pulling more weeds, you know, but we did it. And we did it for the most part happily because we love the game and we love to play. And so we treat our field and our uniforms and each other with respect. So I'm only saying that because I like what you said about figuring out where they are in their lives, because they might not be as sophisticated as you when it comes to love. They might just be, hey, I just love my truck or love wanting to play sports. Cool, we can explain it in that context.
Yeah, build on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rick Lohr, how do you rediscover the drive to pursue success when you've had it, lost it, and feel stuck? Maybe you've built something incredible like a winning battle plan, seen remarkable achievements, transformed your body, or leveled up in business. But then riding the wave of success, you've slipped into autopilot, only finding yourself falling back. Now the fear of falling again looms so large it keeps you from getting back on the horse. How do you move past that fear and reclaim the determination to try again?
One thing that I've thought of, and I can't even remember why I thought this, just over the past week or so, is I love projects. I think most men do. We love to work on things. We love to tinker with things. I'm not real mechanically inclined. I can't like build a home like some men can. I can learn. I just haven't. But when I see a man who builds a home or restores cars, I can't help but think, man, that is pretty amazing that you can do that. And the other day, speaking of my son's truck, he wanted to put a new exhaust that was a little louder on his truck. So that's what I got him for Christmas. I got him a new exhaust, but we had to do it together. So we spent, I don't know, a couple hours taking the old one off, ordering the wrong component, then having to send it back, paying twice as much for the second one, like the whole thing that everybody goes through. And we installed it, and it sounds great, and it looks good. We took it to the mechanic, and he said, hey, when you get it done, just bring it in. We'll make sure it's done right. And so I said, okay. So we brought it in. I'm like, how was it? He's like, you guys did a pretty good job assembling it. You just didn't get everything down tight enough. So they cranked it all out with their hydraulic drills and all that kind of stuff and everything they had. But the point is that we got to work on a project together. And when it was done, we were proud of it. So when it comes to slipping and falling, I think, Rick, the best thing that you can do is make whatever the thing is a project, an exciting project. That has always been enough for me. If it comes to building your body and going to the gym, I look at my body as a project. So when I go to the gym, I'm not just there to check it off a box. I'm there to participate in a project, which is to turn my body into the machine that it can possibly be. When I'm doing this podcast, it's a project. It's something that I think can get better, and I measure it, like how many downloads and what kind of guests are we getting on and what kind of feedback are we getting in these episodes and how does it look and how does it feel and how's the quality. All of those are projects to me, and associated with any project you have is a challenge. And that's what I think most men want. They want to be challenged towards something meaningful. So when you see a guy who walks into the gym and he's 80 pounds overweight, I can't help but feel excited for that guy, because I know if he does the right work, what's to come and how good he's going to feel about himself and how good he's going to look and the attention he's going to get from other people and women. Like, it's going to be an amazing, amazing thing for him when he does that. And that challenge of having that project in front of me has always driven me and motivated to making it better, focusing on small details I might overlook, getting out of the complacency that we might slip into when we are successful. That seems to help me. The project. What is the project?
Let me ask you this, Ryan. You know, he, in his last statement, or his sentence, I should say, Rick said, how do you move past the fear and reclaim the determination to try again? What's the fear? Like in this example, right? He's had success, he slips, falls back, and because he had success and he fell backward, what's the fear?
Well,
what do you think?
I don't know, but here's what I would say. This is one that I've experienced, not paralyzing, but one that I've experienced is, can I do it again?
Like maybe that was a fluke.
Right. Can I even, man, I did it once. I got lucky. I don't know if I could even do that again. I've heard a lot of men say it, and I've felt that in some ways. Can I do it? Can I repeat it? So that's one. There actually could have potentially been some fallout too. I don't know all of Rick's story. I know a little bit about what he shared with me, but there could potentially be fallout from a failure as well. You know, when you do something big and you start gaining a lot of attention and recognition and acknowledgement, and then you slip and fall or slip into complacency or fall back out of obscurity, you know, you could lose friendships. You could be blasted socially. Like, there's a lot of risk that is associated with climbing to the top and then falling. Everybody's pointing at you, mocking you. They revel in your failures. It's actually pretty rough. It's easier in a lot of ways, not all the ways. It's easier in a lot of ways to be a loser. That's why there are so many of them.
Just hide. Yeah, less attention.
Right. But when you put yourself out there and you do something big, people are going to take notice, which is what you want, but it comes with a price that they're also going to try to poke at you.
Yeah.
And so there could be a deep fear of, man, I messed this up last time. And well, here's one in business. Let's say you grow a business to a nine-figure revenue business. How many employees do you have? 150, 100, 200, I don't know, whatever. Let's say you have 50 employees. And then all of a sudden the business goes belly up because you were complacent or something beyond your control. Well, you're fine. You can rebuild something. But now 50 people have to go home and tell their families, hey, Dad's out of a job. And that's heavy for that father, but it's also heavy for the guy who supplied the job for him. Yeah. And so that would be a fear of mine. Like, now I don't have to just take care of myself. I'm responsible in a lot of ways to take care of all these other people. So I think there's a lot that could be at play here.
Totally. Well, and I think, you know, so in the spirit of your response, and I'm stealing this from your playbook, hopefully I'm accurate in saying this, is what's the focus? If we're making assumptions, right? But if the fear is that, what's the focus? A lot of it is Rick, right? Or ourselves, what people think, how do I, whatever. And I do feel like there might be a consideration on your part, Rick, of making this your success more than just you. And now the stakes start becoming a little bit more clear and a little bit more critical that you actually do something again. Because if you don't rise up, if you don't drive forward, if you don't level up, then there's negative repercussions for that, for you playing small. And what opportunity do you have as an individual to make a difference in people's lives, whether it's your family or people that you work with or even potential clients? So maybe a thought process here is the mindset of, okay, great, don't. Act on your fear. Don't do nothing then. Play small. What's the cost to that? And I would guess it's a lot bigger than you not leveling up and going for it again.
I'm glad you said that, because when you were talking before you got to that point, I wrote down here, you said, what's the focus, I wrote down this question: what's the alternative? Like, almost, I was going to say almost the way you said it. It's like, okay, Rick, like, look, here's the thing I don't understand about our conception or understanding of fear. We've made it out to be such a bad thing in society. It's like a swear word. And we do so much that we say, oh, you shouldn't hide from fear. Like all these things. Like here's one: false evidence appearing real. No, I was going to swear. I'm not going to. No, that's a real thing. Having 50 employees and not being able to pay them one day and not pay them the next is real thing.
That's a valid thing. Yeah.
That's a valid fear. That's not false evidence appearing real. That's fucking with somebody's life. Yeah. So there I go. I just swore. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't resist. But I don't like when we say, the only fear is fear itself. No, there's real things that you need to be afraid of. Not to the point where it needs to cripple you, but we need to start collectively as a society having a healthy perspective of fear, which is that exists, it's real, there's real threats, and there's real risk to ourselves, our livelihood, to other people. There's real things happening. We don't need to make it into a bigger monster than it is. We don't need to react or respond negatively or unrealistically or unhealthy to it, but it does exist. And I learned something from Tim Ferriss years and years ago, and he suggested that you play out your worst possible fear. You just play it out, because a lot of fear is just uncertainty. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not real. It's real, but it's uncertainty about what might happen. Play it out. What might happen if you start another business and it doesn't do well? What happens if you have a few employees and you can no longer pay them? And also, the beauty of fear is it's not really there to keep you from doing something. In some cases, it is. If there's a grizzly bear 100 yards and you're like, I'm afraid of that, then I wouldn't say, just approach cautiously. I would tug tail and run personally, so that fear served me and that I can get myself out of the environment. But we have a hard time as human beings differentiating between the grizzly bear that's 100 yards in front of us and somebody laughing at us on social media because we failed. So instead of running from it and saying, I wish I wasn't afraid, just acknowledge that I am afraid, and here's the 10 reasons I am, and here's the 10 things I'm going to do to overcome it anyways. Because the alternative, to your point, is to be a loser. And Rick, you're not a loser. Clearly, I know how successful you are. I know the results that you've produced in your life with your gyms and your business. I know what they are. So you can't sit back. And when that fear creeps in and you're worried, ask yourself, it's either go forward or go backwards. There's no other choice that I have here. And I'm sure Rick will always choose forward.
Yeah. Justin Van Zon, how much does career and status play into a relationship? I'm in a stable job, entering a second part-time job that gives me more career opportunities, and I'm working on an entrepreneurial future. My girlfriend is currently living on savings, has difficult finding a job due to her passport, and is about to start studying this year. I care about her and I want to build a relationship with her, but I also see that choosing the different partner means a life where I could potentially go further. Wondering about your thoughts here and some practical advice.
I am going to share a quote that I posted on Twitter. If I can find it here, I just want to make sure I get it right. Okay, here's what I wrote. This is going to make people mad, but this is what I wrote. It's funny. Here it is. A woman's worth is measured in vitality. A man's worth is measured in capability. This is why in most relationships with age gaps, an older man is with a younger woman. Youth equals vitality. Age equals capability. So people aren't necessarily going to like that, but that's true. It is unequivocally true. So you can not like it, but it is what it is. Now, the reason I bring that up is, what did I just say? I said capability is how man's worth is measured. So when a woman is choosing a man, even if he's a snot-nosed 18-year-old punk, She's looking for potential.
Potential. Yeah.
Potential what? Potential capability. The potential to take care of her. The potential to provide for a family. The potential to keep her safe and protected. That's what she's looking for. And men are looking for vitality, which is why we're so attracted to beauty and femininity and softness and kindness and compassion and empathy, because all of those things, even her body, is it healthy? Does she take care of herself? Because we're attracted to vitality. We want to know that she can have our children, that she can raise our children, that she can nurture them, that she can turn the products and the resources that we bring in through our capabilities into something beautiful, lovely, and useful. We want to know she can do that. If she can't do that, that's not someone we're going to be real interested in. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be something she's real interested in. So I would love to give you a different answer and say, oh, career and status doesn't mean anything, but it does. Of course it matters. The better career you have, the more potential you have, the more access to resources you have, and the better status you have, the more opportunities, the more connections, the more resources, and the more money you typically have. It's simple. It really is. So guys, you got to be a high status, high worth, highly producing man if you want to attract people in your life. And ladies, we love loveliness. We love beauty. It's not anything to be ashamed of or run from or feel like you're less than. It's what we value. We love that about you. And there's nothing wrong with it.
So it sounds like Justin's question, though, is her not having higher capability from a career perspective. You know what I mean? Versus he's not even celebrating her vitality. Well, I don't think he's celebrating her vitality, right? I think his question is like, she's not bringing more capability to the table from a career perspective. And if you went with, a better earning further down their career woman, that
good luck.
He could potentially go further.
Good luck.
Yeah.
I don't understand wanting that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I know there's quote unquote power couples out there. I just haven't seen that be real successful. And it wouldn't be real successful for me because I'm not interested in this woman who's doing what I'm doing. I don't need that. I can take care of that stuff. If you want that, that's fine. But what I'm going to tell you is you're not going to have kids. You're not going to start a family. And the only way that's going to happen is if she lets go of her career to some degree and decides that she wants to focus on a family. And if you're thinking, hey, I don't really want kids. I don't really want a family. I just want to be with this woman. I want to make a lot of money. She wants to make a lot of money. And maybe you might even miss a lot of intimacy between feminine and masculine energies because she's got maybe more masculine energy if she's chasing that stuff. So if that's what you want, then you should find somebody like that.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a family and you're looking for beauty and loveliness and softness and tenderness and the ability to nurture and to have children, that's not an indicator of her ability to do that. Her ability to tear it up in the boardroom. Those two are not the same set of characteristics.
Yeah. And so maybe maybe a recommendation for Justin is like confirm that's what you want. Because that superficial, superficially you might assume that that's what you want, but in reality you may not.
And now is a really good time to do that before you get into the relationship much further. That would be something that's crucial. And also, I don't know did he say how old he was?
No, he did not.
Okay, so if he's younger, when you're young, you're just so excited about life and you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants in a lot of ways. And it's harder to look out in the future. But if, let's say he's 23, 25, I don't know, I'm just making a guess here. It's really hard to see yourself even at 35. But at 43, I can see myself at 53 for sure. It's just right around the corner.
Yeah.
So you might say, well, I don't really want kids. Now you're 25 years old. Of course you don't want kids now. But at 35, is that something you think you might want? Because now is the time to be ready for that. This is actually a trap that a lot of women fall into due to the feminist movement, is they're told their whole lives, hey, go out into the workforce, compete with men. It's hard, but you can do it, and you need to develop these characteristics. And I've seen C-level female women, females, they are very masculine, without exception.
Yeah.
The ones that are at the top of their game, C-level. I'm not even saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying that's a dude with long hair and a different anatomy, because they are very, very masculine in their approach. And what ends up happening, because they've been sold this bill of goods, is they get 10, 15, 20 years into their career and they look back, they're like, oh, I kind of wanted children, or I kind of wanted to start a family. And now they don't have that option, or at least they don't have the opportunity like they did when they were 25 years old. So be a little bit predictive in what might happen down the road too, because that's certainly something you want to take into consideration. Ooh, that little segment's going to make people mad. Don't you think? There's going to be a lot of women who don't like what I just said. It's true, though.
Yeah.
It's the reality. Is there anything I said about that you disagree with?
No, not at all, actually. No, I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah.
No.
All right, what's next?
All right, Justin Webb. Justin, my apologies, but I'm going to shorten up your backstory a little bit. So Justin comes from split home, father remarried a couple times, mom remarried a couple times. Now he is a father of 3 girls, divorced from their home. I feel it's important to discuss that, recognize that their sadness and their anger caused by the separation that their mother and I created. One thing I wanted but never felt was my parents to identify that I was struggling mentally and emotionally. Maybe they did notice, but they never brought it up for discussion, and it was likely that they avoided it because it was uncomfortable. Now, as a father who failed as a husband the first time, I have these uncomfortable conversations with my 3 girls. I never want them to feel the way I did as a boy lost in a storm of emotions and no way to sort through them. One of my daughters is more defiant and colder than her other sisters. It has often caused me to anger until I remembered that I was the same way and I didn't feel heard. 2 weeks ago, we discussed that, and I understand the divorce has effect on her deeper than her sisters. I identified that I see her and why she's cold and angry. It was like I lifted the weight off her chest. I didn't fix anything, but I let her know that I do see her and I understand her pain. My question for you both, do you have these same types of conversations with your sons and daughters? How do they respond, and how do you learn from them?
Well, I try to have these conversations as well. And I only say try because I know how difficult it is, and I know what they're going through, because not only am I experiencing it currently from a different vantage point, but also because when I was a kid, I was in a similar situation. Had a couple different stepdads come into my life, and I never really felt, for some reason, a lot of the emotional, mental anguish, or maybe even didn't express it or didn't acknowledge or understand it. I guess there was moments, now that I think of it, where I did feel that way. But I don't know if I ever blamed the divorce. I don't know what I blamed it on, actually. That's interesting. I'll have to ponder on that one a little bit now that you say that. But yeah, of course you want to have these conversations with your kids, and it sounds like you're doing a good job. One thing that I think is powerful that you said is that you're having these conversations, plural.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when we see problems, we just want to rush in there like men and just like tackle it. Come hell or high water, we're going to fix it. We're going to be done with this thing today. And firsthand that it can't be fixed in one conversation. There's also personalities to take into consideration. You talked about your one daughter being a little bit more maybe cold than your others. I don't know that I would necessarily define her that way. I'd be very careful defining her that way, because it might not be that she's cold. She might, be cautious, or she might be, she just might be quiet. She might be contemplating. There might be a lot of good things that is actually coming across as what you're saying is coldness. So be very careful, because if you think she's being cold, you're going to treat her like she's being cold. And I'm not saying you're going to be mean to her, but you're going to like push on her, and she's probably not going to like that. My second son is a lot more internally reflective. He doesn't really express himself externally like I do. So, but I can see when the wheels are turning, and I can see when things are bothering him, but he doesn't put those things out there on display like my older son or my daughter does. It's just their personality. So I think you're doing a good job with the conversations. I would one other thing I'm trying to do, because I know this about myself, is I have to rein in the heaviness of the conversations I have, because my natural inclination is to get really heavy really quick.
Yeah.
I'm a serious person by nature. I want to talk about real issues. I want to get to the problem. I want to fix it. That's can come across as bullying to people who aren't like that. So with my second son in particular, sometimes I'll say, hey man, do you want to go to the gas station and grab a drink? He's like, yeah, sure. So we'll go grab a drink, and I don't say anything about anything difficult at all. Nothing. Just like, hey, what's going on at school, or what's going on with your girlfriend, or, you know, what do you like in these days? Or like, he's big into basketball. He loves basketball. He loves sneakers. So I'm like, what's the coolest sneaker that's out right now? And we just talk about stuff that has zero relevancy, you would think, in some of these deeper conversations. But that's helped him open up and us have a better relationship. So make sure you're not always heavy with them, that you're lighthearted, playful, playful, and having fun with them as well.
Yeah. No, the only thing I'd add is I agree with everything that you said. I'd be careful, like you said, around labels, as well as suggestive that, oh, they must be upset because of the divorce, and that you creating that reality for them. That could be the case, but it could also not be the case. And I find it fascinating that kids will latch on to labels and identity all over the place. And so be careful what we might create for them that may not be true. And so how do you then have these difficult conversations then? Promote self-awareness. That's it. And I would really, and that's kind of, if I had to put like a bucket around my conversations with my two older boys, it's really around self-awareness and them, and you know, how they feel about things, and what do they feel about those emotions, and what does that mean to them, not me. Like, oh, that must be from when my mom and your mom and I got divorced, and it could have caused, like, so whoa. Like, I don't add all that meaning. They'll add enough meaning to the world. I don't want to do that. I think the best coaching is in the space of self-awareness and self-discovery. And so, like you always say, Ryan, is like, have a conversation with them. How do they feel? What do they think? That's really what we should all be promoting, because it's their interpretation ultimately that matters anyway, not ours.
Yeah. Well, and I also think, and I'm trying to learn this more and see this more. I mean, our job is, as parents, certainly is to guide and steer and direct our children, of course. Yeah. And there's moments where you need to do that. But I'm beginning to think, and I don't know what the rule or the ratio is, that it's probably 20% that and 80% letting them express themselves.
Totally.
But if you're anything like me, it's 80% of me telling them what to do and why to do it and when to do it and how to do it and how to think and why this is good and why this is bad, and 20% of them listening to them about anything that, and even when they do talk, I'm like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So
totally.
I think we need to flip that. We all probably need to flip that on its head a little bit.
And one last thought, like, it is natural human behavior to want to be a victim. We will fight that all the time. And you will see our kids latch onto stuff. I mean, how many kids talk about, oh, I got anxiety, I have ADHD, I'm this, I'm that. We never talked about like that when we were kids. The reason why is all these labels are floating around, so people latch onto them. Oh, let me explain myself. I'm this way because of this, right? It's like, trust me, your kids will latch on to stuff. So be really careful what potential labels or excuses or paradigms of victimhood that you might allow them to latch onto, and then they'll use it as an excuse. That's human behavior. And so be careful that you're not promoting them coming from a split home as a reason for how they show up in the world. That's not good either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the circumstances, and we rise above the circumstances. Like, it is what it is. Everybody has hardship, everybody has struggles, and here's ours, at least part of ours, and here's how we deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at first when you said, I don't think everybody naturally feels that way to be a victim, like, because I started thinking about myself. I don't feel like I'm a victim, but I've done a lot of work on ensuring I don't feel that way. But I think you are right. Naturally, and we talk about the natural man quite often. Yeah. Naturally, we are victims. You know what I get frustrated with is when I see people walking around with all their mental and physical ailments, and they wear it like a badge of honor.
Totally.
It's like, I have ADHD and I have this and bipolar disorder and this. It's like, good God, like, are you excited about, like, you seem excited about that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but your identity should be, I'm doing this in spite of, not I'm this way so I can't.
Yep. Yep. It's crazy.
Cool.
So crazy.
Keep going.
All right. Spartan mode. We're going to hop over to the gram really quick. What's the best advice you received from a mentor or guest on the podcast that has changed how you approach life? What's the most important lesson you've learned from building Order of Man? So pick or choose a question.
There are so many things that I've heard. I probably have forgotten more than I remember. I think at this point, you know, a lot of the lessons that I've learned come from people that maybe haven't even been on the podcast, to be honest with you. And I only say that because sometimes I get frustrated. You know, you can look at how often a podcast is viewed and downloaded and all that. And of course, the people who are the most popular always get the most downloads. But they don't always have the best things to say. They're just the best at saying them. But if you spent time like sitting down at a basketball game, well, here's an example. I sat down at a basketball game with a friend, kind of a casual acquaintance / friend last week. And we've known each other. We've talked. We never really spent much time together, but I sat down by him and we were talking through the whole game. And man, the conversations we had he asked me a little bit about the business because he knows what I do. And I asked him about his goals, and we talked. He's in education, and he was talking about being administration, but he doesn't like administration. So he went back to being with the kids, but he can make more money administration. And just the conversations that we had over a high school basketball game was amazing. And I would actually just want to promote that maybe a little bit more. Like, I'm trying to bring people in here that are relevant and have great things to say, and all of them do. So I'm not trying to discount that by any means. Yeah. I would just hate for somebody to overlook talking to their grandpa about the lessons they learned during World War II.
Yeah.
Or the guy at the gym that you see every day who's jacked and shredded. Like, talk to him about how he got that way, and he'll tell you all the problems he had to overcome to get there. If we just start more conversations in publicly as men, I think, and then apply them, I think we'd be a whole lot better off. And that actually is, to his question about what's the greatest lesson that I've learned, is there's so much wisdom and knowledge out there if you're humble enough just to listen to it. And there's been times in this movement over the past almost 10 years now where I have been humble and where I've been overly prideful. And when I'm humble, everything just goes better. I feel better. Other people are involved. The business grows. We attract more guys into what we're doing. The problem, though, part of the problem anyways, is that culture and social media in particular doesn't reward you for being a humble person. Some of the most braggadocious, arrogant loudmouths are the ones who get the most notoriety. You know, I could list all those people off. You'll know exactly who they are, and you probably follow them because they're loud and they're brash and they're arrogant. So I like humble people. I try to be humble myself. I like the stories that you maybe have never heard of before. And I've been thinking about, I don't want to disclose too much information, but adding a new dimension to what we're doing with the podcast that might gear a little bit more towards that, rather than just having the same guest on, regurgitating the same information they did with the 20 other podcasts they did before me. Again, nothing wrong with that. All good and relevant information. If you listen to it and it's valuable, great. But if not, or not even if not, just recognize there's a lot more conversations happening or should be happening outside of the world of podcasting. But I will say one thing as I say in that. One interview that I did last year that really stood out to me was Jefferson Fisher. If you guys don't follow him, he's very big on Instagram. I think he's got over 5 million followers on Instagram. But he talks to people about how to communicate in interpersonal communication. He's an attorney by trade, but he uses lessons learned in his law firm and court to how to establish boundaries, I saw one the other day, what to say when someone tries to slight you in public around other people. Like, he's got really, really good information. But that's Jefferson Fisher, and I learned a lot about him, and I'm studying what he shares so I can be a better communicator, not only here, but in my everyday life as well.
I love it. All right, last question. 970 Tyler, what are some new hunting tactics that you have learned in the recent years? Hunting tactics.
New tactic. Well, I mean, new to me, I suppose. I'm always learning something about hunting, but the biggest thing for me is I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, and I always will be learning, how to be quiet and be patient. That is the hardest
thing to do.
It is the hardest thing for me. To be patient, I just have to sit here and wait like an idiot, or just to be quiet, you know, and be maybe even not quiet. I can be quiet, to be still. Because being still is more about being present in the moment and realizing the job at hand. I've wondered, Kipp, and you've been out to Minnesota now with us. I have wondered how many deer I have not seen that I could have shot because I'm not paying attention. Have you ever? Yeah. Did you ever think that?
Oh, totally. In fact, when you said like being quiet or whatever, mine's like, it's actually not being quiet. It's staying present.
Yes, same thing.
Staying present while looking is the most difficult thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on the same page with that. You can be quiet. Like, who are you going to talk to anyways? Like, that's easy.
I can just
sit being here. Still and being present. Yeah.
And like, but still looking, right?
Right. I've thought that, like, I've been out there for, I think 7 years now. And there have been probably so many deer that have walked right under my stand, right by me, 30 yards broadside on a 170-inch, whitetail buck that I just didn't see or whatever because I wasn't present and available, or I was on my phone texting you guys or like whatever I was doing. So I don't know if I've learned that, but in the spirit of your question, that's what I need to learn. That's what I need to focus on. I mean, the tactics are the tactics, like how to stalk in, how to get downwind, obviously scent. I'm realizing how big scent is. I never really put much of an emphasis on that, but scent is huge. So playing to the wind, knocking down your scent. I actually think scent is more important than what you're wearing because of the way that the animal's eyes work. Like our grandfathers wore denim jeans and bright red flannel jackets, and they shot more deer than we've seen in our entire life. So I don't think it's always like, this is the best camo because, whatever. I mean, sure, we can update with technology, but I think if anything, focus on the scent.
I have one. Letting go of how I think it's going to, what shot is going to be available to me. Like I have a tendency to sit in my blind or whatever, and I go, okay, here's my lanes, and they're going to come this way. Like, says who? But for whatever reason, I've decided that they're going to come from a particular way, and this is how it's going to go. Yeah. And if it doesn't go that way, all of a sudden, right, to your point, I'm not looking over to my left, and all of a sudden I'm not ready. I didn't even practice that shot. I don't even have the right angle, and now I'm not ready. So I think the openness or letting go of the expectation of how it's going to go and just be more fluent with what presents itself is probably like maybe the biggest lesson for me right now, I think.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's interesting. There's a lot to be learned. It's a never-ending learning cycle for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's other ways of learning. And one of those ways in the Iron Council, and I give you credit for this. I've never heard of this term. It's a military term from the Army, right? AAR.
I think most military units use a version of the AAR, after action review. Got it.
And so it's been pivotal to me in my life as we do AARs around, even when we do events, we do AARs around our battle plans of, what worked, what didn't work, what pivots. So much that even where I work today as an executive, we have an instigated process that's at the center of our learning as for us to be like a learning organization is what we call retros. We do retros and everything. What do you know? Same exact questions that concept. I've learned from you over the years around AARs. And you have a website. Do you want to talk through that and what's available and what people can get out of that?
Yeah, a lot of men have asked, how do you reflect on anything, whether it's the year or reflect on a conversation that you had or how you performed at work or, how you cook dinner. I don't know, anything. Always looking for that feedback is crucial. And so we put together a resource. It's at orderofman.com/AAR as an after action review. So orderofman.com/AAR. And if you just drop your email in there, we'll send you the AAR that we've put together for a year-end AAR. And it'll allow you to reflect on what you accomplished throughout the year, what you didn't accomplish, memories, little prompts so that can trigger memories to help you think about what went well and what didn't, and also start thinking about what you want to do moving forward. And then there's another link in there on that after action that will direct you to a resource that will allow you to take that information that you've gleaned in retrospect, right, the retros, and apply that now, today, moving forward. So, and those tools are all free. We just want to make those tools available to you. So again, if you go to orderofman.com/AAR, you can pick up that resource. It'll be delivered to your inbox, and you can start thinking about what you did well and what you want to do better as we roll into the rest of 2025.
Excellent. And as always, you guys can follow Mr. Michler on X and Instagram at Ryan Michler, and join us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/orderofman.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the questions. Kipp, appreciate you as always. Way better when you're here. You weren't last week, and it always goes better when maybe you just take some of the pressure off, right? And
I just enjoy
that. The conversation. So appreciate you, man. Thanks, guys. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.